Hi everyone, my name is Mary Catherine. I'm coming to tell you a story this afternoon. Something that happened to me and Martin the other day. We was doing some trailblazing, and he said, "Do you think that you would ever be able to survive in these woods?" I said, "Of course I can." He said, "Oh, you can't do it." I said, "I can too." I said, "All you got to do is get you some of these uh, herbs and stuff." I said, "We've got wild garlic, we got wild onions, we've got, bay leaves and stuff like that off the bay leaf tree." And I said, he said, "Well, what about meat?" I said, "Well, I don't know about meat." I said, "It's not hunting season, but we could probably find something if we try." So we was out digging around for some herbs and stuff, mushrooms and everything. And I came across what looked like a big hairy toe, a toe, like, on your foot. And I told Martin, I said, "Look here, God's provided." He said, "Oh, Mary Kay, you ain't going to do that." I said, "Yes, I am too." I said, "You just wait and see." So I picked it up, put it in my pocket, wrapped it around with the paper towel and everything. We came to the house, and I was getting pretty hungry. So I got me a boiling pot full of water, and I put some those wild onions and mushrooms and the wild garlic and salt and pepper and everything on it, and then I dropped that hair toe in there. Well, before I did that, I took the hair off of it, and after I let it simmer for a good long while, and after a while, it got to smelling good. I didn't know what kind of animal it came off of. I thought it had to be a bear or something. You can eat bears or whatever. And it got to cooking. Martin said, "That smells good." And I said, "You ready to eat some of my wild herbs and wild meat?" He said, "Yeah." I mean, I felt like Carolyn Duncan here. She loves to kill the possums and stuff and serve them up with beef tips and rice, and not tell you what they are until you done ate your fill of them. So I got us a bowl out, and I kind of pulled the meat off the bone and everything, and about that time he had made some cornbread too, and we was sitting down there, we was eating, and man, we was like hogs at her slop. That was the best hairy toe soup I'd ever ate before in my life. It was the only hairy toe soup that I'd ever ate, and so did he. And I guess you wonder why I'm telling you this. Well, later on that afternoon, uh, just about dark, and the moon was coming up, and the moon was kind of full, and I saw this kind of a black cloud cover up the moon, and heavy feeling came down there, and I could have sworn I heard somebody hollering and screaming, and they were bellowing, and they were saying, "Hairy toe, hairy toe, where's my hairy toe?" And I said, well, and that's what it sounded like to me. And I think I had told Dwight and Daniel that I did this. And I thought, well, Dwight and Daniel, they're trying to pull a trick on us. It's okay. So we went on later on that night, and then slowly but surely the wind started blowing through the trees and the limbs, and it was giving me an eerie feeling. But we decided we was going to, go in the house, and we could hear something closer, like on the wood line, and it was just a yelling and a hollering, "Hairy toe, hairy toe, where's my hairy toe?" And I thought, Martin said, "You sure that's Dwight or Daniel?" And I says, "I hope it is." So I we had our tummies full, so we went upstairs and crawled in the bed. We'd made sure the doors was locked and everything, and about that time we heard something on the porch, and it was a bellering and a hollering. I mean, it sounded horrible, and it was "Hairy toe, hairy toe, I want my hairy toe." And I was thinking, "Oh God, Martin, I don't think that is Dwight and Daniel." And he says, "I don't think so either." So he kind of hid and covered up his head with the comforter and everything. But I played it pretty smart. On the way upstairs, I had my fanny pack, and on my fanny pack, I hang my hatchet on it. It's what hunters carry. You carry all your gear and stuff on it, and but it fits like a fanny pack, but it's bigger than what some people would say a fanny pack was. And then about that time, all of a sudden, the front door busted open. I mean, it went pow! And Mark said, "Did you hear that?" I said, "Yeah." And he got lower down in the covers and put the pillow over his head, and I jumped off the bed and I got on the other side of the bed. And all of a sudden, I heard a stomp, 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 stomp up our steps, up the stairs. And he said, Mary Catherine, we got troubles. I said, yeah, I know. And I said, is the door locked? He said, yeah, it's locked. And then we could hear heavy breathing and all. And then all of a sudden, we were sitting there and I heard that bellowing. And it was so loud, it rattled our inside. And next thing I know, that the bedroom door busted open. And this big, huge, hairy beast came in, and he was hollering, "Hairy toe! Hairy toe! I want my hairy toe! Where's my hairy toe?" And I jumped up from behind the bed, and I had that hatchet in my hand, and I said, "I ate it!" And about that time, I reached over there, and I chopped off his other toe. And you talk about some hollering and screaming and bellowing. It was so loud, it sounded like an elephant in the room. Even the walls were vibrating and shaking. We thought we was having an earthquake. Well, that thing got so upset it took off and running, and it ran downstairs, and it ran out that back door. And I yelled at it. I says, "Was you raised in the barn?" So he doesn't have the other big hairy toe, but I got it. And that stew I made was so good, I decided I'm going to cook that one too. And I've done cleaned this one. And matter of fact, I have it right here. Look at here. Go back. Good eating. Looks like I got a little bit of toe fungus here. Happy Halloween.